Hey guys, you are listening to the Unruly Doctor podcast, a podcast about life, metaphysics, current events, politics, and anything I find interesting. Please subscribe to our channel and like this episode so that we can grow and reach a bigger audience. Enjoy the episode.
Oh yeah, here we go again.
Okay.
I got my home skillet on here, Dr. J. Dr. J, say what's up, man.
Hey, what's up, Pat? What's happening?
Dr. J is another chiropractor out of Wisconsin. We went to school together. So introduce yourself, man. Let everybody know what's going on.
So, Jackson Detrick went to school with Patrick in the Twin Cities. I now practice in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Yeah. So how long you been in practice now?
I think we're coming up on 3 years.
Yeah, man. I think you should be at 3 years because
Go
I'm almost
quick.
at 3 years, and I started like after you, I thought.
It was like December we graduated, and then I think I got like my clinic rolling in like March.
Yeah. And you've been
So 3 years. Go
yeah,
quick.
man. And you love it?
Oh, yeah.
Is it magical?
Yeah, it is pretty magical. It's a lot
Yeah.
better than school, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. And for those sports fans out there, Dr. J lives in Wisconsin, but yet is a huge Vikings fan.
Yeah, I was at the game on Thursday, so
Yeah, and how'd
a couple days to recover.
Yeah, pretty legit.
It was a good time.
It was good.
Glad we got the W. It was like 29-0 with 6 minutes left in the third, and they came back to they came out of the last play. So
Oh yeah.
just like typical Vikings collapse.
The reason everybody likes watching the Vikings, of course, right? The ultimate losing every time.
I wouldn't say that. It was stressful.
Well, I thought I'd, and for everybody listening and watching and stuff like that, I thought I'd bring Dr. J on the show just so, because I just recorded the other day about, the metaverse, virtual reality, kind of, and Dr. J's mind kind of works a lot like mine where he digs a little deeper into it. And, he's not afraid to, speak his mind about stuff like that. So, so I only made a 27-minute recording the other day just because I really wanted to expand on it further in the next episode, which is this one, because then at least I can get somebody else's perspective on it because I think that's a little more interesting. Have you been following the metaverse thing much?
I mean, I've seen the commercials. I mean, I think we all kind of know where it's heading.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting last December when I came out to Phoenix.
Yeah.
And we were on that Oculus. I mean, do you remember that like social room that?
Oh yeah. Why don't you tell them what happened to you when we so for like my older audience maybe who watch this, right? So the Oculus Quest 2, it's one of those virtual reality headsets. I have one. It's made by Facebook. Once again, not my favorite company, right? But so Dr. J and I had a great time. So why don't you tell them what happened the first time I ever plugged you into the virtual world?
Well, I think you like picked me up from the airport and you're like, we're about to get on this like VR. I was like, definitely skeptical. And I think we get plugged in and like the first thing is like, you're like dancing with this like blue thing. I was like, I'm not doing this. I think I just took it off and tried to hand it back to you. But that one game that was on there was pretty sick. It was like that Two Pistols game.
Yeah. Well, but then I remember you got attacked by a group of cultic children.
Well, yeah, the games itself were pretty fun, but like the social aspect, which is like what concerns me. Like I've always gamed and I like video games, but like the social aspect of hopping on that. And I mean, it's like if anybody played Halo 2 back in the day, and I mean, you like put music on through the mic to like mess with your opponents. It was like that. But like now you're the older person and you got these like 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds chirping you, and I mean it's just like it was a different vibe. So I took it off.
Well, you know what, man? It's I'm getting concerned because the thing I talked about the other day on when I did the podcast by myself about this topic was in no way do I think the metaverse is created to help anybody. I think it's actually a behavior modification system. I think that's what it's actually designed to do is to change people's behavior and, almost control them, because, it's hard to control people in a physical world, but it's very easy to control people when you're in like a digital environment, when people are behind the screen, behind an avatar.
You can control their reality,
right?
As opposed to like life where you're, it's not a whole lot you can control. It's different when you enter like a augmented reality that is controlled.
It's like you can make people do stuff. It's like when we plugged you into that VR headset for no more than like 30 minutes, and you're already like accosted by weird behavior, right? That's like normally in real life, right? Like it's not like you're gonna go walk down the street and because we could tell the kids were probably young. They're probably, these kids were probably like 10 or 12, right? And they probably thought this was hilarious. But like in real life, you're not going to walk down the street and like a goon pack of like 10, 12-year-olds is going to surround you and be like, Satan, 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 all the weird stuff that they said to you. It's like, no one's going to do that in real life. But in a virtual world, like weirder stuff than that happens all the time. And like I discussed the other day when I recorded the first half of this, I was kind of talking about how it's really like this behavior modification system, because it's going to come with rewards. Like, for example, when I talked in the other podcast, right, I was talking about how, right now, I'm sure you saw the news about that, where they're selling these plots of land, right? So did you see like the Snoop Dogg article where it was like, he bought a plot of land and then a bunch of other people bought plots of land around his for like 10, 15 grand a piece?
Oh, yeah, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so Snoop Dogg bought some plot of land, and then a bunch of like fanboys went on there and they bought like plots of land around his for like literally for like 10, 15,000, dollars, right? And my assumption is they're trying to hope that they're like going to get in the virtual world at some point, and they're going to be like Snoop Dogg's neighbor, right? They're going to be like, oh, hey, Snoop, and Snoop's going to be over there, with an avatar of like Wolverine or something, and he's like, hey guys, what's up? Fascism and nizzle. But see, that's how they're going to like suck us in. They're going to suck you in with stuff like that. And then that's when the behavior modification is already going to start. Like, stage one is just the acceptance that people are spending real money on something that doesn't exist. That's step one. Like, I'm buying a digital plot of land that's just on the internet for the same amount of money that I could spend buying like an actual piece of land somewhere in the Midwest. And then from there, it's going to be, the example I was using was like, they're going to have like digital contractors. It's like, once again, the way they'll suck you in at first is that you'll actually be able to make real money on here. So like, some guy who's good at designing and building houses in real life will say, well, dude, why am I going to be doing this in real life when, I got to be out there. I got to have crews. I got to have, safety inspections, la, 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 la. Why would I do that as a contractor when I could go into the metaverse, building houses in the metaverse, getting paid the same, if not more, and have no risk?
Yeah.
Like there's no overhead. What's the overhead in that? But what they'll do is like, they'll exchange money for tasks. That's what I think it's going to do. Facebook is going to come out, or Big Pharma, or, George Soros's of the world will like fund these little tasks that'll look like some private company, but really it's just them. It'll be like a shell company, and they'll say, hey, can you go censor, 12 posts about the government that, that were negative, and then we'll give you, 10,000 Facebook bucks that you can spend. I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's where it's going to go for the behavior modification.
Yeah, well, I think, we're not going to see any of that for a while. Like you said, there's going to have to be like a draw to get in there.
Right.
I heard there was like some like main strips where, companies like Chanel, like a nice like bag shop is like, they're putting down premium money to be on that strip where they're going to be hosting, different live events and whatnot.
Live events, selling NFTs.
Right, like NFTs or just entertainment in general. And then, it's just like a slow draw. It's like slowly and slowly you have more and more trust in this technology. And then eventually you're just like, yeah, it's normal to go spend 10 grand. Right now you ask the average American, not gonna put down 10 grand for a virtual bit of information,
right?
You know, like, but there's a select few right now, and when that starts to become more of like, 10% of our country or 20 or 50% of the world, then you can do whatever you kind of want. You can put those incentives in place.
Well, and it's what's crazy is I'm pretty sure that they're definitely, I mean, there's obviously a bigger plan to this thing. Like you said, they're going to be sucking you in with these little things. Like one of the examples I kind of think of is, the grandma, right? Like the way that they get you sucked in on this is they're like, because, people will be like, well, why do I want a virtual plot of land with a virtual house that I pay a bunch of money for? Well, maybe grandma is in this state, your whole family's in this state, and instead of just FaceTiming, you all want to meet inside some living room somewhere and you want to play games or something like on your virtual television, or it'll be something like that where like that's how they're going to do it, to get you kind of sucked in.
And it's like, technology wise, like that's actually like a really cool thing. You're
right.
stuck in a snowstorm, you can go connect somewhere with your family.
Right.
It is a cool concept.
Right.
But I mean, like everything, there's going to be drawbacks. There's going to be data.
Right. Well, that's how they're going to initially suck you in, right? Is they'll say, oh, well, this is, guys, this is what we're doing because it is something cool. Like that is something you and everybody else.
You can like rationalize it. Like, oh, that makes sense. Like I can rationalize with that. That would be cool.
Right. Like, and like, you experience like the VR right now has still got that little blurry effect to it and a little bit of dizziness. But once they eliminate that, which is already happening, they just came out with a new headset that's like 10 grand. Now, of course, nobody's going to buy it, right? Except for a few people. But I watched reviews on this like 10 grand headset or 20 grand headset. And it was like, according to the reviewers, it's mind boggling. And it actually has like these very high powered cameras on the outside so that you can actually do augmented reality where you can combine like virtual objects with your real, world situation. Like you could have a table in front of you and you could be taking virtual objects and assembling them on your actual table,
like recreate your apartment or grandma's house or whatever.
Yeah. Well, but you could even do it in your own place. Like you could literally have your own setup at home and then you can have like a virtual model of a car and you could be disassembling and reassembling this virtual model on your kitchen table in real life. See, that's like the stuff that they're also doing is augmented reality, where they're actually augmenting your actual environment with digital things. You know what I mean? So like if you bought an NFT, I could use this headset because it has tracking on the outside, and I could like put my NFTs and all my other stuff. Say I have because I have my cool podcast room, right? Like that's where I record out of, right? And I've been decking it out and making it look cool. But then I could also do a virtual version of this room where I could scan it with the headset, and then I could hang up all my expensive NFTs and all my flexes online, where if anybody else wanted to visit my podcast room, or say like, for example, someone's watching this podcast through VR, you could actually like see the augmented reality, not my, you know what I mean? Like you could do an interesting looking studio with just digital assets, like that's the type of stuff that, that's partly where it's going, where like, yeah, that's like kind of the cool, once again, there's a lot of cool things that could be done.
Like opportunity in there. It's, you know,
there's like cool stuff.
It's like trust the people behind it more, it's like a really cool thing, but it's like perfect timing as the next Matrix is coming out too.
I literally just talked about that, man. The new Matrix is coming out, and this is the Matrix, man. This is seriously the Matrix.
20 years ago, you're like, that's just crazy talking. Now it's like, dude, there's where you can get plugged in.
Well, and I know this is going towards prisons. You ever watch the movie Minority Report?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, this is going to be, you remember how they have like the little visors and then they ship them down to these like freeze tanks and they make them just like live these, that's like their cruelty-free prison, as they put them under these like VR headset things and they just freeze their bodies and, until they die. It's like, that's the type of stuff that's going to happen, man. And it's like, kind of like the Matrix. Like, what if, for example, the technology and the brain mapping and all of our other technologies get so good, which they will, that what if somebody just like sneaks up on you while you're sleeping, puts one of these things on you, it clocks you into your own reality, and then boom, it's like gone.
And you have no idea.
Yeah, you have no clue, dude. You have no idea
Like,
that you even that happened.
like, 5-10 years of, taking in data of your behavior.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we can actually make your reality.
Exactly. Or you could be young again.
You have no idea.
Like, what if, there's like positive applications too, right? Like, let's say grandma's terminally ill or something and she's in a lot of pain or something. You could put some type of headset on her for the last 2 weeks of her life where she could be out of pain and young again or something, and experiencing some virtual world where at that point, they'll have it tuned into your nervous system where you can actually sense like what you're grabbing, or, I literally just binge watched
Turn off pain receptors.
Yeah, everything. You could eat, drink in virtual reality, right? People will be able to design new flavors that don't exist. It'll be crazy if you think about it, which would be cool. But the problem is with humanity and with the company that's backing this, there's no way it's going to be more positive than negative. I know that.
Yeah.
It's going to get
if you're a
abused.
betting person.
What
do you think's going to happen,
it's like, fool me once, it's like this company, man. It's like,
fool me 30 times.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you look at it, it's like, it's a really cool idea and concept. And I think like there's like with every piece of technology, like there's like huge upsides to it. And like, even like I have like a football game going on in the background. And it's like, you look back 20 years ago, watching the game, it's like a tiny little screen.
Yeah.
And it's hard to figure out what's even happening. And now it sucks you in more and more. And it's, well, there's always an opportunity cost, as you're getting more and more hooked up on a screen. What are you missing out on?
Well, yeah.
In the real world.
Like I said, and I think that's, like I said, the most concerning thing is, and I think this is all part of the plan, man. The fact that they unveiled, unleashed is actually probably the the better term, because I do think it's probably going to end up being a very negative thing. But, the fact that they're releasing it now, right, during all this hyperinflation, during all of this power grabbing that's happening, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the little bait and switch, it's, for example, I think I just read an article.
Here.
Oh, well, that's exactly what it is. Because like I read an article this morning, and it was talking about, this is the highest that used cars have been priced since the early 70s. This is the highest hyperinflation we've had since the 70s, and that was during, is that Jimmy Carter? Was it Jimmy Carter the 70s, and he's the one that caused all the inflation then and the gas shortage?
Maybe.
Let me look this up. Hold on. I got to Safari this. I'm pretty sure. I'm not the greatest historical buff. Let me see. 70s Jimmy Carter inflation. Let's see if this actually comes up with something. Stagflation. Yeah, Carter's 1970s. Yep. Yeah. Oh, my dad's calling me. Should we put him on the show?
Tap him in.
Can I merge? Hey, Dad, what's going on? Oh, hold on. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Now I can. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're on my podcast. I was actually just recording. Say hi to Jackson.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Mr. James?
Yeah, we're recording.
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good.
So don't say anything about any baby or childhood embarrassing stories, or because now you're on the recording now.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry about that, guys. I'll jump off. I don't want to interrupt.
Okay. Well, anything to add to my audience, of our audience of patients?
Think about the Metaverse?
Yeah, we're talking about the Metaverse.
What are you talking about?
We're talking about the Facebook Metaverse.
The Facebook Metaverse. I don't have a clue what that is. I probably can't answer that.
Oh, man. Well, I'll have to inform you over Christmas.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, I will let you guys go, but give me a call, Patrick, later on.
All right, I will.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
All right, bye.
Nice to meet you too. Have fun, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. And now it's just us. So that's probably my dad making sure.
Saying, like right now, it's like there's people that have no idea even what this like Metaverse is.
Right.
20 years. I mean, there's the same thing with Facebook. At one point, like nobody knew what even Facebook was.
Yeah. Well, like
freshman in high school. Now it's like you're like outsider if you don't know what Facebook is.
Well, it's like I was just saying, I'm like, that this, they didn't design this for, people over the age of like 40. This isn't designed for those folks. This is designed to indoctrinate.
For the introduction phase.
Yes, this is to indoctrinate the newest generation from here on out to make this the normal. To like be like, hey guys, because this is where I think it relates back to the hyperinflation. Not only is this a distractor, but it's also the transition, because what they want to do is they want you to start transitioning your life from physical assets, which are too expensive now, right? Unaffordable rent, unaffordable homes, unaffordable gas, and they want you to shift everything into your small little cubicle. See, that's what I think is going to happen is everyone's going to live in these really small, crappy apartments that are like 600 square feet. They're going to be very small, but very expensive, but just enough where you can afford it. And then you're going to spend your entire day in the virtual world working. You'll be doing virtual working, and the government will like send you your food, just enough for you to survive. And, it'll be free to live in your little cubicle. It'll be included with your citizenship.
Well, I mean, like you look at like food and stuff. It's like, that's, if you look at it from like a cost effective, it's like you really could survive on a very low budget of food.
Right.
And then if you had something, to take away, like the dissatisfaction of what that food would be, like the metaverse, where you can have the sensations of a steak, at a different price than the real world.
Exactly.
And people would buy it.
That's exactly what it's going to be, dude. You're going to be eating food paste like the Matrix, right? They're going to be liquefying, like we'll be drinking only liquids or something. It'll be like vitamin and mineral infused liquids, with just enough fat so you don't lose weight, right? Like you'll probably tell them, well, of course, they'll already know. Here's the thing. You don't even have to tell them anything. They'll probably be constantly monitoring us. Like children will be injected with microchips the moment they're born to monitor all their, and once again, they'll sell this as a safety thing. They'll say, oh, it's like, in order to keep your child
safe, their heart rhythm.
Yep, monitor your heart. We have to monitor their brain waves. We have to monitor their genetics. See, our technology will be able to constantly monitor DNA and to make sure if there's a mutation happening to immediately exercise it, so cancer won't develop, and it'll automatically tell you if you have a viral infection or a fungus or something immediately the second it happens. And then, you know what I mean? They'll say, please see your local doctor, quarantine. And then of course, because of the control thing, please quarantine. We'll send the doctor to your house automatically.
That's like, that's a scary component too. It's like, well, what if you're saying, things that don't go with the narrative? Almost like, let's say this guy's got a virus.
Yep. That's what it's going to be, man, because they're already talking about it.
Dude.
That's what they're talking about. They're already talking about those RFID chips, and those RFID chips, they're talking about how that's going to monitor you automatically for C19. And I'm like, I don't buy that at all. I'm not buying that for a hot minute, dude. Yeah. It's all about control. It's all about, getting deeper into it. And, like you said, it'll be cheaper to create things on this virtual world because the real world is so hyperinflated and is awful.
Well, it's just, I mean, like you can literally control everything. It's like, if you got to that point where it was like they're sending in, your nutrition based on your needs, quote unquote. It's like, that's not you making a decision on what you're putting nutrition wise into your body. It's like, well, maybe we need to like cut this guy with a little something,
Right.
You can control what kind of, there's enough data out there. It's like, well, you eat enough of this food, you develop this disease, put a little bit of this chemical or this chemistry into their body,
Well, and I think it's, one of the concerning things too, is it's like, it'll also get rid of all inhibitions that you would normally have in real life, right? So like someone could eat as much candy in this virtual world as they want, as much soda, as much beer, as much whatever. You could basically be unlimited in anything. And then when you get back into the real world, you're going to eventually transition those habits into real life. Like or for example, like if you're playing video games that are so realistic, because like we said, it'll actually be tapped into your nervous system, and you know, in the virtual world, you'll be killing people. You know what I mean? Like realistically, you know, you will be that warrior. Like in VR right now, you can do all that. You can kill creatures and other players and stuff, but it's still so non-realistic that you know it's a game.
Yeah.
But what happens?
Well, you know, if
like,
it's like, well, what if you're getting like hit with those like, you know, dopamine responses and that virtual reality? I mean, it's still tapping into your body's chemistry. Right. Now you go off the Oculus, like you're gonna have withdrawals.
Right. You're gonna get like you're gonna be excited by the fact that you just murdered some players. You know, like competitively.
I mean, yeah, from a murder standpoint or like a, you know, soda standpoint, like
right.
You know, realistically, you're not gonna put down like 5 2-liters in a day.
Right.
I'm sure there's some people that can, but like it's a really small percent. And it's like, well, what if there's no repercussions to whatever you're drinking?
Right.
In the VR world, and now you're just like going ham on that, get that response, and not suffering like the physical effects of it. And now you're like in the real world, like, well, dude, I'm used to like 2 liters of pop a day. How am I gonna like not have?
Right. Or like sexual things, right? Like there's definitely gonna be big sex rooms. There'll be like streets, right? It'll be like the red light district where, you know, virtual either avatar, like fake, it'll be like NPCs, programmed NPCs to be like hookers and things like that. But then there'll be actual people, right, who will be like tapping into an avatar and doing their sex work. Like, I mean, that's the ultimate, right, for sex workers is then they don't have risk of disease and whatever. And they could probably make way more money and they could work all day long. Yeah. You know, where they'll be doing this virtual sex work with people where there's no human contact because it'll be easy to make money and have less risk of being assaulted, you know, having almost no risk of being assaulted or whatever, right? But then like, mentally, what's that going to do to these people?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where there's just like, I mean, with every like cool thing you can point out, you could probably like point out 3 like risks involved.
Right.
Know, 3 aspects that should be.
Well, it's kind of like that movie, like that Matrix scene where the guy's eating the steak. Remember that scene where he's like,
ignorance is bliss, right?
Yeah, he's like, you know, it's like, oh, ignorance is bliss as he's eating that steak, you know, and even though, and in the whole scene, he's like, you know, I know this isn't real. I know that the Matrix is telling my brain that this steak is juicy and, you know, whatever. And it's like melting in my mouth. Like he's talking about all these things. And it's so true, man, because that's where it's going to go. These headsets are going to.
Hey, man, hypothetically, this Matrix movie that's coming out, how dope would it be if it was like tapping into like the Oculus and the Metaverse and then like Neo just like fucks it all up?
Man, you wish, dude. It's like, but I'm also, if we're really digging deep into the meanings behind the Matrix, because I do think that the directors are really trying to warn us, man, of the future.
Desensitize us. They're trying to desensitize us, or they're trying to warn us.
Correct. I think they're either trying to mentally prep you, which is probably the more likely because it's Hollywood. Hollywood's one of the most corrupt organizations. You know, we all know this. No one questions.
Keanu Reeves is like always coming through.
Right. Keanu Reeves is a legit dude, but even, you know, he's an actor. I mean, it's like, what's he going to do? Right. I mean,
they'll probably look for some like subtle things he's doing throughout the movie.
Right.
You know, that's probably where the truth is.
Right. And I think the Matrix, like I said, like you said, it's either the Matrix is people trying to wake us up to like what's the agenda behind a lot of the future plans, or it's totally to desensitize you, prepare you, and excite you by the fact that, you know, that this is coming. I mean, it's pretty coincidental, man, that this gets announced during all this hyperinflation and times of where everyone's locked in at the same time where VR technology from Facebook became widely available through the Oculus One and Oculus Quest 2. They made it super cheap, super effective, right? All the games are cheap. The headsets are pretty cheap, relatively speaking, compared to what they used to be. They're also wireless, so you could, like, for example, like during Thanksgiving, I brought my VR headset to my dad's house, which played in his living room. You know, I didn't need anything else. I just brought the headset. It's all built in, you know? And so, like, that's widely distributed now. And so it's already prepped and ready. You know, it's like, it just seems all so coincidental, right? It's just everything happened at just like the perfect amount of time. Like the Matrix came out at the same time as the Metaverse, announcement.
Well, I mean, like when you're looking at generations, it's like, oh, a lot of that stuff was coming out as we were, younger and impressionable.
Right.
Now it's like, well, what's going to happen with this? Because now we have forms of augmented reality. Where in the 90s, no, I mean, you had Apple computer, and that was about it.
Well, I remember like you used to go to the fair. Do you ever remember that? Like you go to like the Minnesota State Fair or any of those, and then they had like those virtual reality booths where it had this giant circle. This is like for all my young audience out there, they don't even know what I'm talking about. But anybody who's from the 80s, 90s, 70s knows what I'm talking about. It was like these giant rings you stand in, and they had these massive headsets. They were like huge, like they look like hood things, and they were super heavy. And they only had one game, and it was a game where you were like this pixely looking polygon guy, and you were shooting these giant looking polygon looking bullet things. There was one red player, one blue player, and that was a game. And it was super laggy, unrealistic. You know what I mean? Do you ever play that at like the state fair?
No, I never saw that.
Oh, dude, that was VR, man. That was my first time ever being in VR when I was a kid. And
there's people that didn't even see that. Now it's like, I mean, you step forward 30 years, it's like, we all know that's where it's heading. We all know that there's a reason that this technology is out, and they're going to keep developing it.
Well, I get concerned too. It's like not only for the health implications of these headsets, because they're spitting out radiation. I really got to get an EMF reader on one of those and see what it spits out. Because
even like a video game, it's
for
like
sure.
I can play a game for like 30 minutes to an hour, and I'm like, I gotta put it down and walk away.
Right.
Eyes and my mind, it's just so much stimulus.
Right.
And that's the whole room is into the video game. Now it's like you put that Oculus on, and there's nowhere to escape unless you take the thing off.
Oh yeah, I mean and the time goes by very quickly in VR. That's one of the things I've experienced is that like 3 hours can go by super quick because everything is done manually. You don't have a character who can sprint around. Typically your character's not. It's like if I play like a big game like that's got vast, giant lands, usually in those types of traditional video games, you've got a controller that can make your character sprint or fly or ride a dragon or something, right? But like in VR, most of these games are designed as though it's real life, so everything takes the same amount of time it would take in real life. And they're even talking about that now, where they're talking about how games of the future, right? You're going to do the walking. You're going to do the sprinting. You're going to do the crouching and the whatever. Like that will all be you doing that. You'll be standing on like a platform that's like got treadmills on it, and they're already designing them. I've seen them. They have these treadmill platforms where it'll sense which direction you want to walk or run, and it'll automatically change and shift. So you'll be able to sprint and crouch and whatever.
Well, it's like, from like an opportunity.
Right.
Dragon Ball Z style. Like, that's be a big selling point to hop in there and fly around.
Well, and that's like, and I think
there's a lot of cool stuff that could,
that's it.
Potentially come in, but how much of that do we trust?
Well, I think and I think it's actually kind of like legit and cool to, say like, because that's great exercise, because I could be playing a game where it's, I don't know, who knows? And I have to actually run from this place to that place to get from this city to that city. I actually have to chop the wood myself. I actually think that's kind of cool. I would actually enjoy that because then I'm actually moving
more
physically.
Activity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like
especially like winter. I mean, like for us up here, it's like if they could get everything down to where it's like I could VR into a golf course and it's like beautiful outside.
Right.
I'd probably get it.
Yeah. Or, it's like, or maybe there's like a survival game and I have to chop the wood. I have to make the fire. I have to walk. I have to gather. I have to do all the gathering and all the whatever. I got to plant the seeds. It's like you could go into so many interesting places with that, but it's like, I know that people will take it too far, like, because it is so engrossing. I know that for example, if someone's playing a video game and it requires a lot of walking, sprinting, chopping, fighting, whatever, you're going to have people passing out. You're going to have people dying of overexertion, too much exercise, because it's like unrealistic stuff that nobody does in real life. You know, like they already see that happening in like South Korea where, you know, they have these game cafes. And in these game cafes, like every year, a couple people die because they don't eat, sleep, or go to the restroom enough. And
Seriously?
so, yeah, you haven't seen that? Oh, man, these people just drop dead. They're like these young kids. They're like, you know, in their late teens or early 20s. They spend like 2-3 days awake. They don't sleep.
My God.
They'll be awake for like 2-3 days at a time. They'll sleep for half a day. Then they'll wake up in the chair. They'll have just Mountain Dews and, oh, yeah, man, snacking, and then
You'll
they just die.
see it, you know. Then all of a sudden, you know, the new, you know, you can upgrade and
Oh, yeah.
get, you know, you can just like, I don't know, press a button or think about it or however it's hooked up, and you can do those activities without physically exerting yourself. And you're just like laying down, moving. You're just VR world.
Have you ever seen the anime Sword Art Online?
No.
Oh, dude, you got to watch that. I binge watched it like last month because it
What
was
is it?
Sword Art Online. It's an anime show. It's not that long. It's like 3 seasons, and it's really good, man. Once you're in, you're like hooked. But it's like a show where it follows a teenage kid, and they have this technology now in Japan in this show where virtual reality has gotten to the level that you and I are discussing, where it plugs in on your head. Basically, put it on, and it immediately gets into your nervous system, into your body. You lay down, and it transfers your consciousness into a digital avatar where you can experience the world completely physically. You can feel the pain when someone punches you. You can eat digital food. You can taste it. You can drink. You can, you know, you're fighting animals and stuff, and you're actually like you're fully engrossed, right? And so that's the show. But what happens is after the kid plugs in, right, they have a new game come out. The new game's called Sword Art Online. So everybody logs in for the first day. They're all having a great time. But then they go back into their menu, and in the menu, the log out button is gone. And everyone's freaking out, right? Because you can't log out unless someone from the outside world takes your headset off, right? That's the only way you can get out without the button. Someone has to discover you.
Plugging, similar to the Matrix.
So it's like the Matrix, right? Like unless someone from the outside unplugs you, you're in it. You can't get out. And so then they realize the designer of the game created this whole thing to purposely trap everyone. And so then he appears in the first episode, and he's like, "You guys can't leave until someone defeats the final 100th floor." But then he says, "I've rigged all of your headsets to where if you die here, you're dead in real life. And if anybody removes the headset, it will also kill you." So the show is these tens of thousands of people all get taken to hospitals and get hooked up to IV fluids and nutrition while they're plugged in this game for like the last survivors. It takes like 2-3 years or something for them to beat the game. But like a bunch of people die because they died in the real game. And see, that's where this could go, right? Is like, it's all fun and games for like a decade or 2 or 3, right? The technology gets to some level like we're talking about, and then the government just flips the switch.
Yeah,
The government
something different.
Yeah, they just flip government, Facebook, whatever. They flip the switch and they say no one's allowed to leave unless you listen to everything we say. You know, and like,
and that's, you know, like that's one of the big threats to the technology. You know, where it's like, you know, you're outweighing opportunities and threats. Like it's a valid thing that could happen if you're in there.
Right, and it even talks about, there was an episode in that show where one of the scientists in control, so he beats Sword Art Online, and then they come out with new technologies, of course, right? Other companies took the pieces of the original one after this atrocity was resolved, right, and made in other games. And so then he gets plugged into a new game, and the designer of that world was secretly doing brain experiments on people where he figured out how to tap into their consciousness from these VR headsets and basically mind control them. And so that's the other implication of this, is that as we understand the brain deeper, as this technology gets deeper, as all these things get deeper, you know, I think eventually you'll you'll actually be able to mind control people in some way. You'll be able to influence them, make them more agitated, make them, you know, more brain fogged, jazz them up, bring them down.
Look at mental health already. I mean, it's like as technology's gone up and social media has gone up,
right?
What has our mental health done?
Right.
Well, now what it's like, well, you can't get away from that technology.
No.
Imagine like it's a world where it's like to some capacity you have to use it. Like, think about like our businesses.
Right.
We have to use Facebook to grow our audience,
in order to function.
Market ourselves. It's like you could do it without it, but it's like you're just at a big disadvantage without using that technology.
Oh, you're at a huge disadvantage, right? Like that's why I do a lot of the social media, but I try to use it for good. I try to use it to expand people's thoughts and things like that, and not just fall for the bait and switch, because that's really how a lot of this stuff is being presented. It's a big bait and switch every time. They get you in, and then and they pull the rug under you, and then you find out what their real intentions were, right? Like that's what the government's doing right now. They're doing all these things out of this promise of safety, and I keep warning people. I'm like, guys, not long from now, they're going to pull the carpet from underneath your feet, and you're not even going to realize how deep you were into this. You're giving up everything for the promise of safety, and then they're going to pull the rug under you, and you're going to figure out what they really wanted, and that it had nothing to do with helping you, unfortunately.
Yeah. In an ideal world, it's like a subscription base, and you can do a lot of good with it.
Right.
No, it's not.
Well, it's, and I think a lot of people, that, most normal folk are just good people who want to help and do things, right? But the problem is that they think that everybody's like them. They think everybody would do the right thing most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that just isn't how it is when you're at the top of these things. The tops of these pyramids, man, these people don't look at the world like we see the world. They don't look at other human beings like we look at other human beings.
Yeah.
They don't really care about other human beings that much. They only care about themselves, and they only care about the control and power and financial gains that they can make by, doing all this stuff. I definitely think you should watch that show, though.
Well, it's like, you watch, going back to film, it's like all these quote-unquote bad guys. It's like, just like make up a bad guy.
Right.
There had to have been a bad guy at some point.
Right.
For stories to exist,
We're just basing it on that, right? We're like taking from real experience, and we're just basing it on.
If bad people didn't exist, we wouldn't have the concept of that in story.
Right.
There's no such thing as a bad person. Like, you don't have to like make it up,
And it's and I mean, it's people got to understand. It's like these types of things don't all just come from only the desire to make money off people. Like some of the people who are a little more kind of awake to things will say, "Oh, well, yeah, well, this is a big money thing." I'm like, okay, yeah, you're a little more awake than some people, but you're still not awake enough to understand that it has a deep negative undertone underneath just the money making. There's a lot more going on here than just that little aspect of this problem.
Well, how do you, accumulate more and more at that level of money? It's like, then it just kind of turns into more of like control.
Right.
Like you have all the money in the world.
And
what's the next thing you look for? Control.
Well, and like, I think people, right? So for example, like gas prices, right? Everybody right now is like focusing on gas prices. They're like, oh my gosh, big old JB. Hold on. Let me.
All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
Right. There's our favorite Joe. Everybody wants to talk about Joe. Give him one more time.
All men and women.
Yeah. So, everyone wants to talk about Joe, right? And gas prices. Well, here's my take on it. Joe isn't doing this stuff, and his government and his cabinet and the people who control Joe, because Joe is he's a figurehead. Nobody cares, right? Everybody's focusing so much attention on Joe. And literally this man is just trying to get his ice cream every day. He just wants to, put on his diaper, have a scoop of ice cream, You know, that's Joe right now. He does nothing. He has no control over anything. But
well, I mean, back to like, you know, like people not like understanding that like it's possible for
right,
people to act poorly. I
right,
think something that like helps me look at it is like, well, if everything like in our society was like done correctly and like people all had their best intentions,
right,
like there's no way in the country of America that we're pumping out politicians like Hillary, Biden, like you can even make a case for Trump. You know,
right.
so like all the leaders that I've come across just in the Midwest, how is like that what we're coming up with?
That's the
Right?
best
There
we
has to be
got.
some level of you know, there's some level of criminal activity for that to be what we get to vote for.
Oh, for sure. You know, and but people don't understand is like these people don't do these things on accident. Like this hyperinflation is not anybody who thinks this hyperinflation is an accident, they knew this was going to happen when they spent all that money, when they printed all that money. But they're doing it once again to modify behavior. Like a perfect way to modify someone's behavior, if they want you to drive your car less, what do? They create inflation in gas prices, right? So the more expensive gas becomes, the less people drive, right? If they want you to eat less food, they get food prices higher and you eat less food. You know,
or what kinds of food, you know. So,
that's the other thing. If they want you
I
to
mean, look
eat,
at where Mickey D's is sitting at.
that's right. Like right
$1
now,
for a double cheeseburger.
they want us to eat less meat, right? That's why meat's one of the things that went up the most. They want you to eat less meat. So how do they do that? All of a sudden, we got a pork chop shortage, chicken shortage, right? Everybody, like last 4 months, hey, we ran out of chicken wings. BS, man. We have the most chickens of any country in the world, I guarantee you. We didn't run out of chickens. Don't lie to me. I know we didn't run out of chickens. There's no flipping way. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have more chicken than anybody. You know, but what do? They say they run out of chicken. So then they bump up the prices, you know, so that one, they make a lot of money on less chicken, but two, they're modifying your behavior. They want you to eat less chicken for a while, but they want you to go eat this other thing. It's all behavior modification. You know, they want you to get used to not driving. So what do? They make gas prices so unaffordable that you drive less, right? Maybe you take a bicycle, or maybe you take a bus, maybe you carpool, right? They're modifying your behavior. They do this by either giving you a benefit or by making something unaffordable or negative. You know, like in the carpool lane, for example, that's why they created the carpool lane. They created a benefit. If you have more than one person in your car, you can drive in the carpool lane during the work week, save time, you know, modify your behavior. They want you to have more kids, child tax credit. Want you to have less kids, take the child tax credit away. Now you have less kids because, you know, now it's unaffordable. You know, people just don't realize that that's what's happening. They want you to use less electricity. They shoot electricity costs up. You know, that's how they do it. It's very subtle because it works its way into your logic because they know exactly what a logical person would decide when something becomes unaffordable. You just don't do it anymore. You know?
Yeah.
It's like it's obvious behavior modification when you really think about it. You know, if they want you to spend more money, what do? They lower taxes. You know, they want you to save more money and stop spending as much in order to create, you know, a weakened economy in order to scare people. What do? They shoot taxes up. They overtax. And now you have less money, so you spend less money. And then it tanks the economy, right? That's what they're doing right now. They're spending like crazy, printing money, and they're shooting taxes through the roof on everybody, not just rich people. It's everybody in different ways. You know, you're paying way more for everything right now. Is that not a tax? You know, just because they didn't put TAX on the name, when you're paying 50% more for your gas, isn't that a tax? Huge tax? Yeah, it is. You know, so it's all behavior modification, and they're trying to essentially make us very reliant upon other, you know, the government entities in order to just live and breathe. They want us to, you know, through these methods, become basically subservient to the government, to these power structures.
Well, I mean, it all goes back to if you can create the solution, and that solution has a whole lot of control within it. Me is the metaverse.
Right.
Like you poll people now compared to 2-3 years ago, a lot more stressed out now in the reality, in the real world.
Right.
A little more stressed in the metaverse.
Well,
more taxes.
And they've also, made the newest generation of human beings the most afraid, depressed, angry, anxious.
Divided. It's like if you really sit down and talk with people, it's like everyone pretty much agrees on 90-95% of everything.
Right.
And you have like outliers that are like hardcore left and hardcore right. That's like, no one really agrees with those views.
Right.
They've somehow convinced people that like, no, that's like how you are if you're conservative. That's how you are if you're somewhat liberal.
Right. And that's like that's
more to like, I gotta pick a side.
Yes.
Red pill, blue pill.
That's right. That's the other division method, is like labels. What's your label?
Like, no, like I think we can all just like take each issue and have an opinion on it,
Right. Yeah, that's kind of where it's gone. So I think that's a sweet place to pause it. So why don't you give everybody a shout out to your social media pages, man? What's your deal? Give it out.
I mean, Facebook, Jackson Detrick.
Yeah.
Two Rivers Chiropractic EC for Facebook too.
And where are you located in Wisconsin?
Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Oh boy! So if you're a cheesehead that somehow finds this, I'm actually sometimes surprised at where people find my videos. I've got people contacting me from like the Middle East, Germany, Italy. I get like people somehow finding this stuff from like all over the world. So, chances are you may actually find someone giving you a call from one of these videos from about Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So Two Rivers Chiropractic, Dr. J, any last final, comments, concerns?
I mean, control what you can control. I think the world gets a little bit darker if you keep like, have balance, get off that tech large periods of the day. I think it can be used for good, but get out there, get outside, do some golfing, hit a cigar shop up.
Ooh, yeah. Are you a light or a dark cigar smoker now?
I'll do whatever, but what was the last one that you smoked?
I went golfing.
Visit us at our Airbnb.
Well, that's a quick story. I'll tell that quick story because that is a funny story though about me and Dr. Jackson. So Dr. Jackson came out here for his birthday. When was that? Oh, well, it was a conference, but then it was also your birthday that similar time frame.
Yeah,
last March. So he comes out last March. Him, his fiance, and his buddy was out here too already. Mm-hmm. Met him up for dinner. And so since it had been his birthday recently, I bought him and me some really nice cigars, and I decided to go darker than I usually go. But at that point, I had never had a problem with cigars. People had told me several times about getting like really sick or nauseous or throwing up, and that's just kind of part of a cigar smoker lifestyle. That occasionally you try to slay a beast that's just way too powerful for you. And but I still hadn't hit that limit yet, so I thought, these are dark, but they weren't that, they weren't that robust, So then, like, I met him back at his Airbnb after dinner. And, we sat on this patio, this Airbnb, and we're, smoking cigars, and I'm doing all right. I'm fine. And then, like, we probably finished like half of them, and I'm feeling a pretty strong cigar buzz. And so we go sit down on the couch on the inside. And as we're sitting there, like, I'm like, oh my God.
We're talking like metaphysics.
Yeah, we're talking about like typical trippy metaphysical stuff, the stuff that I love talking about. Yeah, healing with your mind, healing energy type healings and things. And Dr. J talked about a seminar he went to where a guy basically read you like a book from the audience, which at some point we'll have to tell that story because that's an interesting one. But
yeah, it was.
And as we're like sitting on the couch or whatever, I started getting like real queasy. I'm like, the room is starting to spin. I'm getting real, like, just the pit of my stomach is really turning. And I was like, oh no. I was like, I think I'm going to throw up. I started getting real pale and sweaty. And Jack, and I remember
the funny thing was you were like talking such a big game about these stogies. Like, yeah, I've been smoking like a cigar every few days.
Yeah. I was on a cigar.
Premium one that you want.
Yeah, I was on smoking 2 cigars a week. And I was starting to get into it like a real hobbyist type thing. I was trying all different types, and because I got a cigar lounge at my apartment, I just go downstairs, quick little walkover, and I got a legit little cigar spot, and so it's like, I was like, I think I'm going to throw up. And I remember you were like, no, come on, man. And I'm like, no, I'm like, no, I'm going to throw up. And I went to like the sink and I was like, and then I was like, I got to go outside. And then I went outside and we had like all of these tacos. I think that's what it was. It was like tacos or something. Or I had like mole. I had like mole tacos or something. And I remember I'm like trying to look. I'm like, where am I going to throw up? Where am I going to throw up? Because it's an Airbnb. And so I try to like do the gentlemanly thing where I found a chair. I stood on the chair. I like went up to this fence line. I guess this wasn't great either. And I started just yakking over this fence line, just decimating the poor neighbor's backyard. I felt bad, but I was trying not to get
like trying to sleep.
Well, I was trying not to get you in trouble by having to throw up in your guys' thing because yours is an Airbnb. So I was trying to throw up over the fence. And so I threw up a bunch and it was all over the place. And I was like, oh my God. And I was hoping that was the end of it. I came back off the chair. I'm like, nope. And then I didn't have enough time. So I just like turned to my left and I just splattered just the chunkiest, grossest throw up all over the side yard of the Airbnb.
I think you were like looking at me like, am I getting like whiter? I was like, we were like just talking about the power of the mind. I'm like, no, dude, you look good. Drink some water.
Yeah. Well, apparently the power of the mind did not work at all because that shit did not work because I kept telling my mind, you're not going to get sick and throw up right now. And boom, it just exploded out of me. And I remember I got inside and it was like all over my shoes. There was like little chunks all over my shoes. And so I had to like find a pitcher and I had to like try to pour it over the throw up so it would kind of hopefully melt into the ground by the morning. Good times. So anyway, that was the 6th episode of the Unruly Doctor podcast, man. We're on a bunch of different places. We're on Spotify. Still trying to get us on Apple Podcasts. I don't know what's up with Apple. The typical stuff. It just never works. Really overpriced. Still doesn't work. So I'm trying to get that on Apple Podcasts. We're also on iHeartRadio. I post the video version of these on YouTube and Facebook. We also now have a TikTok at the Unruly Doctor. So you can always check us out on the little shorts on our TikTok page now. I promise I'm not doing the weird, lame dancing and mouthing of lyrics, and I don't do any of that. It's just stuff like this. And then we're, of course, on Instagram, too, and that's at SpringbackCairo. So awesome, guys. Thank you so much.